We are continuing our conversations with former Donald Trump supporters from different parts of the country. And today we'll be speaking with Kyle Sweetser, who's a former Trump supporter from Alabama. Kyle, great to talk to you. I mean, listen, just generally, what attracted you to Trump to begin with? You donated previously, you voted for him twice. What appealed to you about him?
Well, I voted Republican my whole life, since I could vote, basically. So that's one thing, and I'm from Alabama, so you're kind of drawn into that anyways. But him talking about getting rid of regulations like the 2-to-1 thing he was talking about, that
Yep.
resonated with me. I work in construction, and just some of the things that you have to deal with are extreme. Oddly enough, a lot of those things the federal government doesn't have a lot to do with. But like I said, it just kind of he resonated with me there, resonated with the economy, focus on small business, at least in his rhetoric, and the tough talk, and the change of pace uh, that he presented.
The regulation thing is interesting, and you kind of got to where I was going, which was you said you realized a lot of that stuff doesn't really have to do with the federal government. Just to illustrate this, what's an example of a construction regulation in Alabama that you don't like?
So I don't like um, really. It's actually fine now.
Oh, it's fun.
Honestly,
So actually, it's okay
yeah,
now.
yeah.
Okay,
And so I had the problem is I had a different opinion when I was younger.
I see.
I had the opinion that a lot of people have that this stuff just gets in the way, uh, that it's pointless, etc. But as I've gotten older, I've seen the need for uh, the regulations, at least that we have. Um, and we really don't have too stringent of regulations. The stuff that was kind of off-putting to me wasn't something that I was directly never worked with. Like,
Mm.
for instance, I think under Obama they were trying to make it to where you couldn't dig a pond or something on your property. Just weird things there. And then there was another thing where they were trying to push to where you couldn't, if you had property on like a river or something, you couldn't build a new pier. So those kind of things, just because I was aware of, because I was in construction, didn't work in those things.
Yep.
To me, I felt like we shouldn't go any further with the regulations that we have. But like I said, a lot of people complain, they moan about them, they moan about the inspectors, but now as I've gotten older, when I see the inspectors miss things sometimes, and I know that we need those regulations. So, but like I said, it was more about like the just the weird things with a pond on your property, whether or not you could dig a pond from the federal government. Thinking back on that, and then like I said, the pier thing. I live on the Gulf Coast, so that's kind of important for people here.
All right, that's fair. Yeah, I've got friends in Pensacola, and I know a lot of them live on the water, and these are issues of concern. And I guess part of it is interesting. Of is are these state regulations, or are these things that the federal government deals with? But okay, so that was part of the original appeal. What made you say this is as far as I go? 2020 is as far as I go, and I'm not voting Trump in 2024.
Okay, well, I think I was a little. It was easier for me to transition away from Trump because I was affected by his steel tariffs.
Mm.
So, I got to see things go up after 2018 with steel. And Trump promised to build or open 6 new steel mills. Didn't do it to offset those tariff costs. So not only did he, put those tariffs in place, which wasn't ever something I really thought about in the past, but like I said, I got to kind of feel it before everyone else. So uh, from 2018 to 2020, we had a lot of products more than double in price to us. And oddly enough, people really didn't complain. Uh, After COVID, we got all that money dumped into our economy. People still didn't complain. Prices were still going up.
Mm.
Once the money that was handed out, kind of dried out, uh, you kind of started to see people talk about inflation, and I saw it happen years before it was really acknowledged the way that it was acknowledged, at least down here. And so I didn't really say much until, you have people say, "Oh, this is higher," and then you tell them, "Hey, it's because of Biden, it's higher." No, this went up. This particular product went up under Trump. But it's just weird that they turn that political switch, the rhetoric on, and people just, you know, change their tune so fast. So, anyways, that's how it started.
So the
In
tariffs, let's
20,
talk about that a little bit. I mean, so what we heard from Trump was the tariffs will punish China. Of course, anyone who understands how tariffs work realizes the American company buying the steel pays the tariff. And then what ends up happening is it increases the costs to those doing construction in the US, and then those costs are passed down. The goal is, well, it'll make domestic steel comparatively more affordable, but that ignores that the supply chains don't adjust overnight to these tariffs. It takes time. And as you're pointing out, Kyle, during this interim period, it just meant everything was more expensive for the construction companies. I think am I understanding that correctly?
yeah, that's for the most part correct. Like I said, actually, we adapted. We went up with price increases, but we were actually the cheapest, and I believe we still are on most products. So that gave us the room that we needed to kind of take a little bit of a beating, or not really take a beating, but cover the cost. But we take a beating all the time, it seems. Like I said, with our prices, but we were able to adapt better than some other people. And there were actually a couple of companies after 2018 that the way they manage their companies with metal builders, and there was one garage door company. I'm not going to mention them, but or name specifically, but um, they. I'm assuming they rely on the next job to pay on the previous job.
Mm.
And those tariffs, they quote things out and start getting things in, and the price goes up. And it just got, a couple people down here. So I got to see that happen. And that had me to where I was holding my nose when I voted for Trump again. And I'll say this too. I admit 100% that I was wrong. I was 100% wrong about Trump. I was 100% wrong. And I think the biggest problem with trying to get people uh, away from Trump is that they have to acknowledge that they were wrong. And people do not like doing that,
Well, one
period.
of the really interesting things about that is, as I've said before, not that every Trump supporter was in a cult when they were supporting Trump, but there's a very interesting analogy towards getting people out of cults or extreme religious sects, which is you can't just beat them over the head with facts. You have to make them feel comfortable saying, I'm having some doubts or I was wrong. You can't immediately go and judge them and insult them for the mistake that they made. You need it to be an environment where they're going to be comfortable reflecting on their views. And it seems that that's exactly the point that you're making.
Yeah,
When it comes to 2024, you could, if I understand correctly, you're voting Biden. Is that right?
that's correct.
Okay. You could vote third party. You could stay home. It's Alabama. Trump's going to win unless something very strange happens and a meteor happens to only affect the Republicans in Alabama, right? I mean, this is the system we have. Why are you choosing to do that and vote Biden rather than say, I don't like Trump, I'm just going to stay home? It's Alabama. What's driving your choice?
Well, you got to start somewhere. And I think it's a matter of principle or whatever for me. It just feels very important to me, basically, to practice what I preach.
Mm.
Um, and what I've been trying to do is reach out and find other people that are in other places that are on that line, um, where I can maybe help them understand that the feelings they feel that I know they feel. It's okay to say, hey, this I was wrong. I was wrong about Trump. So it's a point of taking this interview as well.
When it comes to like your social views, I'm guessing you're still a conservative guy, right? Like it's not like every view has changed because of Trump. Am I right? Like I don't know what your view on abortion is, for example.
I'll say I'm pretty center
Okay.
when it comes to social things, but when it comes to the national debt, I'm to the right solidly. Which now that I'm learning these things and I kind of open my eyes and looking at these past presidents, I'm looking at their history, and it would be nice if they actually handled the debt. So that's one thing, fiscally conservative, conservative on foreign policy. That was actually the straw that broke the camel's back in 2022 when I started. I actually didn't have a Twitter. I didn't really engage politically at all
Mm-hmm.
on the internet. And so I got Twitter when Elon Musk got, oddly enough. And I started to kind of see what I heard about the misinformation, disinformation, and with the Ukraine war stuff, and you go to check on it, and it was just ridiculous things. But the sad part about it is that these ridiculous things are shared, and before they're fact checked, before they're gone, before there's a note on it, you already have in some cases 1 million people that have seen it, and a
Yeah.
large portion of those people uh, they're going to form an opinion, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Based on that disinformation or misinformation. So you know, that was one of the things that really brought me around.
When you tell other people in Alabama who still plan to vote for Donald Trump that you've had this change of heart, how do they react?
So usually pretty good. So most people react pretty good. I try to keep things as professional as possible. I have a couple of friends that I bug the heck out of. It's only because I love them.
Right.
Uh, but I just send them just like this endless stuff, like, "Hey, look at this," Uh, and I know I'm sure it gets on their nerves, but sometimes I get some pushback there, and that's only from the people that I'm not really able to win over in conversation. But um, most of the people I talk to, they either agree with me, which they might go around and vote for Trump. They might just agree with me to agree with me,
Yeah.
which a lot of people do that. But most people are pretty receptive to it. Now, I've had, and I don't want to reveal too much, but I work all over the place, and I've had been on job sites, and since Trump, I've had people say crazy anti-Semitic stuff that I've never heard that. I've heard other things, but I've never heard that in Alabama.
Huh.
And so you have the increase of that, and then those other things that they say just kind of under their breath or whatever. And it's kind of scary what Trump has done to people. I've had uh, during COVID, pulled up to a job, and I had a guy reach through the window and try to pull one of our guys' mask off of his face because the guy was just being polite, and he started like screaming and acting crazy.
Hmm.
I mean, that's one of the many things that I've seen since Trump, but that was another thing that turned me off from Trump. I started to see what Trump did to people, and Trump just makes people angry. And I started to learn more about populism and really what he's doing.
So, in other words, you saw people kind of like feeling emboldened and freed to say certain things by the
Yeah,
environment that was being generated by Trump,
yeah.
including
So
just
he
saying
made it
anti-Semitic stuff.
okay for he made it okay for bad people to be bad,
Mm.
and there not be any repercussions. I was in the store one time, never saw this before, and some lady took too long to walk up to the cash register to turn it on, and he started throwing. He was an older guy. He started probably in his 60s or 70s, started throwing groceries at the person. I had to, step in and say some things, and he didn't back down from me
Hmm.
at all. But they finally stopped. But yeah, I just saw so many things happen after that, and you're right, it emboldened people to act a certain way, and it just needs to stop. It needs to end because it's escalating.
So, Kyle, what's your goal in the sense of let's imagine that Biden wins re-election in November. he gets his 4 more years, and then of course someone else then wins in 2028, and we move on. Would your ideal scenario be that we dodge the Trump bullet one more time? And then what's your ideal? Is it some McCain style Republican comes to power in 28? Like, if it were up to you, what would you like to see happen?
Yeah, so I'd like to see us return to a two-party system that's not as volatile. It sets a better example for people. You know, that's just not as vile as MAGA is.
Mm,
So I would like to see a Republican Party that focuses actually on maybe reforming some social programs. I know that's not popular. I know that's why they don't always do it, but I'm pretty sure that's the only way to fix national debt.
hmm,
People just don't like hearing that. So, fiscally responsible, strong on foreign policy, Reagan style foreign policy, support our allies. Don't give these countries that wish us harm or wish U.S. led order harm. Don't give them the notion that we might just quit because then that gets rid of our deterrent. So that's another thing. I don't want them to do what Ron DeSantis did, where he launched this Trump style, I feel like, campaign against Disney.
mm.
I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I think Disney should be able to do what they want and or do what they've been doing. And I think a lot of people, for one, that's detrimental to the Republican Party. Disney's ingrained in people's childhoods. They were born here, whether they're a Republican or Democrat. And so that's not going to turn out well for one. But I think it's wrong. The culture war thing, I don't like it at all. I just wish it would stop.
Well, listen, Kyle, I'm sure you and I would be on different sides on a lot of those issues, and it would be a great thing for the country if those were the disagreements rather than should the guy who won become president, which is sort of where we've been at for several years. So I really appreciate you sharing your story. We've been speaking with Kyle Sweetser, who's a former Trump supporter from Alabama, and really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Have a good one.